All right, welcome everyone. This Q&A again. I want to welcome everyone. This Q&A. Number of things came up. We'll see exactly how many we get to. Some, I guess, maybe a little bit political, but we're not gonna get into politics too much. But one thing we'll mention, or at least the first thing that that comes up is the fact that most people know there's a new government that was sworn in here in Israel, right-wing government, which just about everybody in the world is terrified of, because next thing you know, we're going to have Sharia law, and women are going to have to wear burqas and all that. So like everyone and their mother is like terrified of what this right-wing government could do, especially about quote unquote the territories and the West Bank and and other things. So I'll mention one thing first, and that is one of the members of one of the right-wing parties, one of the very right-wing parties, Ben Gvir, as he's known. I don't know, most people have heard of him, or if you haven't. So he's a religious Zionist, lives in Hebron, which is actually not so far from where I live. Regardless, what was one of the first things? So what did he do? One of the first things he did is coming in, is he went on the Temple Mount. Now, a number of years ago, Ariel Sharon went on the Temple Mount right before Rosh Hashanah, caused basically the second Intifada, right? That's what started the quote unquote second uprising of the Arabs. Now people will say, well, doesn't Temple Mount belong to us? It does. That's no question. No one disagrees. The Arabs even know that, but they want to say that they have power over it or whatever. So by them, it's a religious thing, and going up there is a provocation, right? We've spoken about this before. I just want to mention one aspect here, and that is that someone goes up there. What's the problem? Majority of rabbinical authorities hold. We don't know where to go. We don't know where to step. We're not exactly sure, because you could step near the Holy of Holies. You step near the Holy of Holies, guess what? Spiritually get cut off. Now, some will say we know. Some will claim we know exactly where to stand. Okay, let's say that's true. Vast majority say you shouldn't do it, right? 100% you shouldn't do it. So even if you want to say, well, we have a right, it belongs to us, what does it cause? First, it's going to have the status of a road dave. What's a road dave? A pursuer, right? Someone is the pursuer. You can kill the pursuer. His life or your life comes first. You can kill him. 100%, you can kill him. Question is, does the person like that have that status? Now, what are they going to say? The other side is going to say, we have a right to go up there. We absolutely have a right to go up there. Belongs to us. Now, you don't think the Arabs know that? You don't think the Arabs know that? They know that. Now, even if you want to claim it's permissible, what are you doing? What essentially you're doing? You're stirring them up. That's what you're doing. Now, you can stir them up by walking downtown Jerusalem. True? Right? But they're not going to just start up with you, for no reason. In a lot of places in general. We're not talking about terrorist attacks, this, that. But you don't want to give them an excuse to do anything. That's the bottom line. So this is a provocation. Provocation. So now I just saw earlier that you have the UN Security Council is now meeting. They're going to discuss this whole thing. How can he do such a thing and all that? Again, bottom line is, belongs to us. We don't care what the UN says, right? We've been condemned more than anybody, right? Certainly in the UN, combined, right? So we don't really care what the UN says, in general, but you don't start up. There's no reason to start up with them. Not with the Arabs, certainly not. They'll make it a religious war, even if it's based on something false. You don't need to give them any ammunition, no pun intended, in order to attack. You don't need to do that. Right? So it's a provocation. Now, do we all agree? Do we all agree the Temple Mount belongs to Jewish people? Yeah. 100%. We all agree. We all agree. Now, that doesn't mean, that we're right to do whatever we want, even if it belongs to us. It's a provocation. It's a provocation based on a lie, right? 100% based on a lie. So could this start, God forbid, something bad? It could. 100%. We're not disagreeing, it doesn't belong to us. Right? We agree it belongs to us. That no one's going to disagree. Maybe except the Arabs, maybe the rest of the world. But according to us, according to the Torah, it belongs to us. Totally belongs to us. Now, we have to do things to show the Arabs that it belongs to us. No. That's a provocation. You can say, hey, but if we don't do that, and we don't go to these other places, the Arabs will take over. Okay, that could be true. That very well could be true. But so what? That doesn't give us the right to do whatever we want if it's going to be a major provocation. And not only that, it's going to cause, it could cause death to people. They could riot. They could have terrorist attacks. Again, going to other places is not going to stir them up as much. Obviously, it depends where. This is going to stir them up based on a lie. Based on a total lie. It doesn't matter. As my Rebbe would say, you fight against them. Sorry, if they think it's something religious and they're going to make it a religious war, even if it's based on a lie, what that means is that they'll fight to the end. They don't care. Sharon went up there. His intifada went on for a while. You'll say he gave them an excuse. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it gave them an excuse or not. What it did was it got them angry. That's what they did. And that was a provocation. The other side will say, anything I do is a provocation. Not true. Definitely not true. I live, quote unquote, in the West Bank. It's very quiet here, relatively speaking. I mean, we have security. We definitely have security all around. Now, village not far. There are 2,000 Arabs work in this city, which boggles the mind. Boggles the mind to let so many Arabs in, but okay. You don't see Arabs doing anything in general. Attacking people, that's insecurity, okay? But we're not interested in starting up with it. They want to start up with us, okay, so, we'll do what we need to do. But in general, you're starting up with something where they're going to make it a religious war. Once they make it a religious war, that's it. They don't care how many of their people die. They don't care how many people, of yours die. They just don't care. Right? And that's a war you're not going to win, per se. Just do damage control. But they'll go nuts. So this is a provocation. Huge provocation. Did not need to be done. Now, you can tell me it belongs to us and all that. It's true. Okay. So what? Doesn't give me a right to do what I want when I want, even if we would know where we should stand. And that's not going to be a problem being spiritually cut off. I get it. That makes, okay, the majority of rabbinic authorities, and when I say the majority, I mean the vast majority, talking about 98%, hold, you can't go up there. That's it. You got to go according to the majority. But it's more than that. You got to use your head also. Just because it may be permissible. Even if it is, even if it would be, what are the repercussions? What are the repercussions? Repercussions could be catastrophic. Catastrophic. People could die because you want to make a point. Right? That's the first thing. Second thing is, I don't know if we'll get to the third thing, we'll see. Second thing is, that this week, Also, this week, there was also a, let's see if I find it here. It was already earlier in the week. 1 second. All right, whatever. There was already controversy. Let's say a controversy where the speaker, again, not going to get into politics, the speaker of the Knesset happens to be homosexual. Now, you're going to say, okay, so they want to show they're so open-minded till their brains fall out. So they have a homosexual be the head of the Knesset. Be the speaker. Be the speaker. Be the speaker of the Knesset. Okay. So you're going to say, we're not in control. This is certainly, a government, a state that's not run by Jewish law, right? We do understand that, okay. Now a person's going to say so. So that's what they did. What's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? So the big deal over here is that there was an ultra-Orthodox Jew as part of the Knesset, one of the religious parties, who hugged him, congratulated him, whatever it was. So other religious parties, including his own party, like went bananas. They went ballistic. They're like, how can you do such a thing? They're going to say, come on, what are they supposed to do? Who says they had to go up and congratulate him? It's just, the question is, how do you handle these things, right? You got to be sensitive, true. Right? I'm not going to say not. I have to have sensitivity, right? But there's a limit. There's a limit. If I would have my own synagogue, a person came in with their partner, right? Obviously not someone of the opposite sex. I'd make clear, you want to come here? Okay, but there's certain criteria. And there's certain things you won't be allowed to do. That's it. These are the rules. Things that are not acceptable. Things we're not going to condone. So we're not going to make it like, oh, we're just going to welcome you and everything's beautiful. You want to come? Okay. Right? But there'll be repercussions. Understand there will be repercussions. You say, but I associate with the Orthodox. You don't want to push them away. Right? So maybe you can try and bring them closer, try and help them, whatever. Can I give them honors? Could you have them, he's gonna make, you call them to the Torah, gonna make a blessing. Asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim. Chose us from among the nations. For what? Why did God choose us among the nations? Right? That's why you can't call up someone to the Torah who's intermarried in general. Why not? Can't make that blessing. It's a blessing in vain. How can he say you chose me among the nations when you marry a non-Jew? Can't do it. Right? So same thing over here. This is worse. You're going to say, well, what about someone got caught for fraud? Someone got caught adultery, doing other things. Okay. There's a difference between someone who stole, someone who committed fraud, someone who did other things, than somebody prancing around and bragging about what they do. That is a huge difference. People in the modern Orthodox community have this problem, much bigger problem among them, right? So I know someone, unfortunately, I went to yeshiva with, got a son that's homosexual, right? And, he marched in a gay parade. Orthodox rabbi, how can that be? How does that work? You want to show solidarity, right? What do you do with Leviticus chapter 18? It's forbidden. People have these tendencies. They have this, they have that. Got to recognize them. Again, we have to have empathy. I'm not going to say not. I have to have empathy. But that means I have to march in solidarity? Who says I have to march in solidarity? I have to put my stamp of approval of people waving their own flags, prancing around saying I'm doing an abomination and I'm going to show the entire world. Where do you see such a thing? You ever see a parade for adulterers? People committed fraud? Pedophiles? You ever see a parade, people prancing around bragging the pedophiles? I don't think so. I don't think you've seen any of this. Again, you want to do it, it's your choice. You got free will. You have free choice. There'll be payback, serious payback, okay? But okay, person can do what they want. But you want to go around in public and brag and say, I'm proud. I'm proud to spit in God's face. Again, it's one thing you do it. It's one thing, behind closed doors. It doesn't matter if people know about it, whatever it is. But you go out in public and you're bragging. You're bragging that, this is what we do. It's forbidden for non-Jews, by the way. Just throw this out there. Right? Non-Jews 100% forbidden also. So, they're no better. They're no better. I would say it's worse for a Jew in many ways. But, how could quote unquote an Orthodox rabbi be part of it? That makes sense. Right? How can they recognize such a thing? Okay, they're kids, they're going to have to deal with their kid, however they deal with them. Whatever that relationship is. But at the same time, showing solidarity in such a thing, there's no answer. There's no answer how a person can do that. How can an Orthodox Jew in general do it? Never mind, he quote unquote calls himself an Orthodox rabbi. That makes sense. Right? It's nuts. You can't make this stuff up. So, in the Hebrew version of the parsha I send out, I'll mention what my Rebbe here says. I'll just give a general translation here. He says that, I heard the honor and the appointing or the appointment that they gave this week, to this person, this well-known person in the Knesset, Israeli Knesset. So he says, it just shows the decadence of this government, right? The decadence of this place. Tell me the religious parties there. They're, all the religious parties, whether modern Orthodox or not, make up half the Knesset right now, 32 seats. So he says, isn't that a tremendous rebellion against God, against Torah, against mitzvahs? So he says, woe to us. Woe to us. We got to warn people. Maybe here says. Right? What's worse? And again, this gets to the whole thing about election, the why my Rebbe, and even though it's a minority opinion, very big minority opinion, why you don't join the government, why you don't vote. This is one of the reasons. Because he said, you see over here, and it's known, this government is a government with the Orthodox, with the Haredim, as we're known. So how can they be part of it? They have a gay as part of the Knesset. Knesset speak. It's not a small position over here. Right? It's a position of prestige. So he says, so where were protests? Where Rabbi asked, he said it's a desecration, unbelievable desecration of God's name. So my Rebbe here says, I see a great danger. If we don't stand up and say this is disgusting. If we don't get up and protest. Right? See, this is the problem. The problem is, if you're a religious party and you're part of this type of government, even if it's right wing, even if there are other religious parties, There are certain things you cannot look the other way about. Now they'll say, this is nothing to bring down the government. Could be, right? Makes sense, right? Makes sense according to logic. You don't want to bring down the government because of this, but that's not the question. The question is, they're sitting with these type of people. That's who they're sitting with. Right? So my Rebbe here says, this is an unbelievable danger. If there's no protest, it's as if to say, if you don't say anything, it's as if to say you agree. Because otherwise, God forbids, it could cause God's wrath. God could spill out his wrath, my Rebbe here says, and the repercussions could be catastrophic. Right? Because it says, what does the Torah tell me? Rebbe says, but the Torah says the abominations are going to get me angry. They're going to tick me off to high heaven, God says. My language. Right? He says we're going to fight against it. But again, what's the worst part? What's the worst part? You know what the worst part is? They're out there Orthodox Jews. It's part of it. How are they part of it? So what's the answer? So the answer I'm going to say is, it's better than government. It's better we have this type of government. True? They can't control a lot of things. True? How can you? I mean, this person was censured. The one who gave him, a big hug and congratulations and this and that. He was censured by his own party. Well, Rebbe says, if you don't say anything, a huge danger. There's a huge danger over here. So he says, we also know from the verse about the coming of the Messiah, right? Bias on Mashiach, as it's known, there are going to be a lot of trials. During that time, going to be a lot of trials and tribulations. Right? But my Rebbe says we never would have thought we would have come to such a situation today. What's that? That the Haredim, the outer Orthodox Jews, are going to honor these people. They're going to honor these sinners. Sound like an evangelical now. They're going to honor the sinners. Right? These people who are an abomination, their act is an abomination. They're going to honor them. Right? There's a verse in Yechezkel, in Ezekiel chapter 9. Right? It says, part of his prophecy about the abominations in Jerusalem. That's going to be a tremendous punishment. Because God says, because of this in my city, within Jerusalem, they're going to be, tremendous damage is going to be caused. Going to be tremendous sighing, crying out of all the to'eva, all the abomination that's going on within the city. Huge cry out. Says, but we never thought we'd got to such situation. But you got ultra Orthodox Jews honoring such a person. Right? So how can they look the other way? All right? It's a very hard thing over here. So my Rebbe says it's Gemara and Shabbos, page 55, which says like this. That a good thing does not go out from God and comes back for something evil, except something like this. Because comes along Midas Adin, comes along God's judgment. And what does judgment say? What does judgment say? Ribbon Shalom, master of the world. You had an ability to protest, you didn't protest. You didn't say anything. Right? So he says, it's revealed in front of you, you that know all things, i.e. God. that if we would have protested, right, what would our excuse be? If we would have protested, no one's going to listen. So what's the point of protesting? That's what a lot of people say. A lot of people say that's not the way today. We don't protest. They're not going to listen. It's not going to do anything. It's a waste of time. What does the Gemara say? You're going to say if we would have protested, they wouldn't have accepted it. But he says, but the Gemara says, if it would have been in front of you, it would have been revealed. Right? It would have been revealed to them. Who would have revealed it? Because it says, from my holiness, from my mikdash, going to begin, that God is going to accept. That what's going to happen? It's going to come down on the righteous, on the tzaddikim, on the righteous, the ones that are responsible for these things. They're going to pay because they're responsible for the generation. So he says we shouldn't have compassion, shouldn't turn our eyes the other way, etc. When something like this goes on, God has no mercy. God's not going to have compassion on elders, younger people, women, married, not women, children. They're all going to get destroyed. All going to get destroyed. They're pretty scary. Right? You can say, oh, but no one's going to listen. So what? So the point is, even if no one's going to listen, you got a right, an obligation. You got an obligation to be out there saying something. Because if not, the repercussions are catastrophic. Right? So he says it's an obligation according to everybody, for everybody, let's say better, to be mefarsim, to publicize this despicable thing. This chanifa, this sucking up, that's what we're going to call it. This sucking up that goes on. How do the Haredim suck up to this? Because of money? How is it possible? Because, we know about Leviticus chapter 18, but there's politics. I mean, politics. Oh, politics, who cares? It's done through them. Right? It's done through them. And he says, it's incomprehensible, my Rebbe says. Incomprehensible what they're doing. What's going on in their mind? So he says, with this, we should sanctify God's name. God should see and have mercy, upon us, right, and upon the Jewish people, right? Now we should have a true consolation that God's honor should be revealed. Yes, Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meira v'yameinu, amen. That we should see the Messiah quickly in our days. Right? So my Rebbe here goes ballistic. Right? He goes ballistic for good reason. How can they sit there and give honor? They say, so what would be the answer against? Well, I'll give you the flip side. What's the flip side? They're going to say they're not honoring what he does. They're not honoring what his persuasion is. What are they honoring? The person himself. They're giving him honor. They're giving him honor, became the speaker of the Knesset. They're giving him honor. How can you give honor to someone who's a Russian? Chanifa. Chanifa means that you're sucking up to them. You're brown-nosing. We'll say it in a little bit cleaner language. You're brown-nosing. How can you brown-nose to a Russian? To someone who's evil? How can you suck up to them? You're not allowed to. 100%, you're not allowed to. It's a Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition. So Rabbi says, these ultra-Orthodox Jews, I have no idea what's going on in their heads. I embellish that a little bit, but that's what he says. I have no idea what they're doing. How can they do it? They're putting the Jewish people in absolute danger. They're putting us in danger. Because, as we see from the prophet Yechezkel, from Ezekiel, God hates abominations. And there's going to be so much abomination it's going to go on in Jerusalem, right? Right before the Messiah comes, right? And the reason the punishment is so severe because people didn't say anything. People thought it was okay. What do you say? They didn't think it was okay. But they thought if I say anything, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to have any good ramifications. They're not going to listen. But if you don't say anything, the repercussions catastrophic. People get wiped out. Men, women, children, young, old. God's not going to distinguish over here. Right? The character trait of God's wrath, God's judgment, going to go wild. So they're doing it for money. They're doing it because they don't want to offend anybody. No one's going to listen anyway. So we got two things in the last week. In the last week, puts a gun right over our heads. One, going up to the Temple Mount, which we've seen a number of times. Political figures did that. And there were deaths, protests, deaths among the Jewish people here in other places. And now this. The Rebbe doesn't mince any words. And he says, I see an unbelievable danger here. Tremendous danger. And what's even worse, forget what's done. You're going to say, well, what's done is done. The ramifications could be like we can't imagine. Well, that's not almost the worst part. The worst part is nobody says anything. And if nobody says anything, what's going to happen? Going to be a lot of pain. A lot of pain. Even if no one's going to listen, doesn't matter. Right? Rabbi here says that it's going to be tremendous destruction. Meaning, a lot of people are going to die, potentially. God forbid. And the Gemara says, punishment could be that much more severe because people could have protested and they didn't. So there's a Talmudic dictum I'll teach everyone. It's called Shtika Kohodadami. Somebody's quiet. It means that they really agree. Tell me they speak up and no one's going to listen. That's not even the point. That doesn't matter. But what's worse is what we mentioned. What's worse is that you have people look like Orthodox Jews that are giving credence and credibility to something God calls an abomination, that the act is abomination, and that people are liable for death penalty. So now the question is, how could you say it's okay? How could you give honor to such a person? So again, I'll tell you what the answer is. The answer is we're not honoring what he does. We're honoring for who he is, not for these other things. So how do you distinguish? But what about other things? Let's say, somebody who's, a thief, committed fraud, did other things. Okay, there are certain things, if we're going to have a hierarchy, of what's, things on a scale, what's at the top of the list, what's in the middle, what's at the bottom, right? This is pretty much the top of the list. You see, 24,000 people were killed, but what Bilam did, right, through promiscuity, through immorality. God hates immorality. This is the top of the list, death penalty. Desecration of Shabbos, also up there. Intermarriage, also up there. Yeah, you got adultery, you got other things. These are top things that God can't stand. and when you don't say anything, even if no one's going to listen, doesn't matter, then not only are you shirking your responsibility, but you're causing tremendous danger to the Jewish people. All over, not just in Israel. All over. On top of that, you get ultra-Orthodox Jews giving this person honor. God should have mercy on them and on all of us. I mean, there was a picture. There's a picture of an ultra-Orthodox Jew hugging this guy. Again, congratulating him. Giving him honor. It's a Torah prohibition. It's called Hanifa. Not allowed to pronounce someone who's evil. Not allowed to. That's Torah prohibition. I'm not making this up. This is what the Torah says. The Torah prohibition. We're going to say politics, it's okay. We don't want to bring down the government because of it. What are other things just on this topic? Find out this desecration of Shabbos. They don't, it's either you stop it or we bring down the government. Come on, it's a joke. Many ways it's a joke. So you're guilty by association even if you didn't do it. Person will get upstairs after 120 years. God's going to say, hey, look at all these times you desecrate Shabbos. What do you mean? I kept Shabbos my whole life. How did I desecrate Shabbos? Oh, weren't you part of this? Weren't you part of the Knesset? Weren't you part of the Israeli government? And there's desecration of Shabbos going on right under your nose. You didn't protest, you didn't say anything, you didn't bring down the government. No, we couldn't, this, that. Oh, we're giving shut up money. We're giving other benefits to keep our mouths shut. Or whatever the case is. There's got to be something else going on. Right? Otherwise, they look pretty stupid. But you'll say that's part of the deal. You be part of the government. You're part of these people. That's what happens. But again, you're guilty by association. Totally guilty. Totally guilty. Yeah, two things. We got what to pray about. We got what to be worried about. But my Rebbe would say, I'm not worried when anybody in Iran or any other place is going to send bombs in. So I'm not worried about that. What am I worried about? People in Israel who sin. It's not just, okay, people spoke Lashon Hara by accident, this, that, okay, right? People do sin. We're not perfect. But at the same time, you do something that's blatant. Tel Aviv has to be one of the biggest places in the world for homosexuals. Lesbians in God's backyard. Tel Aviv is part of Israel. Right? It's a holy place. Much holier than New York, Lakewood, or any other place. Why? Because it is part of the land. Right? We have the upper hand over anybody. But if you're messing around the palace of the king, that's what happened to Sodom. Why did Sodom get wiped out? They were pretty bad, true. Right? The terrible things, true. Why did God wipe them out? You know why God wiped them out? Because they were in God's backyard, commentaries say. And God hates disgusting things in his own backyard, so he wiped out the whole place. God should have mercy. What can happen here? What can happen here because of all these things? Again, why is this worse than other things? Other things, okay, you don't see thieves, you don't see adulterers, you don't see pedophiles, you don't see, people who speak Lashon Hara on a regular basis. You don't see all these people marching around bragging about what they do. Except them. Okay, they have an agenda. It's a big agenda in the world. I get it. But at the end of the day, for goodness sakes, in God's backyard, that's what my Rebbe says, unbelievable danger. Unbelievable danger puts us in. God have mercy on all of us. But yeah, people should be spreading this like wildfire. Wildfire. You say, oh, isn't it Lashon Hara? No. Totally not Lashon Hara. Protecting people. Showing how bad it is. It's an abomination, the Torah says. The act itself. So how can you praise somebody like that? Live and let live. No, it's not what the Torah says. It's not a Torah. It's not a Torah comment. It's not a Torah concept, so to speak. Right? Someone here points out, very good. How can they say those things and say they have fear of heaven? Go ask them. Go ask them. I was by someone's house yesterday. Someone, whatever, passed away, and I was there. I saw someone I hadn't seen in probably about 20 years, and he says, one of the things I can say, about my Rebbe, he says, convince me, not to vote. This is why we don't vote. This is exactly why we don't vote. Now, again, it's a minority opinion. Spoken about this. Everyone agrees it's a minority opinion. Everyone would agree it'd be much worse. If there weren't Orthodox people in the government, it'd be 10 times worse here. True. But at what expense? At what expense? You say, look at the last government. Last government was terrible. True. Trying to undo a lot of those things. When it came to kashrus and conversion and other things. True. Very, very true. Right? But, this is worse. This is worse. This is why, as the Satmar Rebbe said, of blessed memory, better to be in the opposition. Better to be in the opposition. Because you're part of it, and you have your writing on it, even if you don't say anything, you're in trouble. But it's not just you're in trouble, and you're guilty by association. You are putting the Jewish people in Israel and other places in danger. Same thing by going on the Temple Mount. No different. No different. All right, someone wants to know we can write and show disagreement. Plays all over Facebook. Write letters to the Knesset. Got a better idea. Write letters to the religious parties. And say, how could you say anything? How could you not say anything? Well, got the religious parties. Sure, they all have websites. They all have websites. Write to them. Say, they're stupid. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I might say that. Right? Probably not. Got to show a little bit of respect. Ask them. This is what it says in Leviticus chapter 18. This is what it says about you're not allowed to brown nose, right? The prohibition of osach nifu, right? You're not allowed to be mechanef someone, to brown nose, to suck up to them, right? So how'd you do that? How's that possible? You didn't protest, right? To all parties that are in the Knesset. Now again, if they're more Orthodox, you're not going to get anywhere. You should do it anyway. Why? Because they have less of an issue with this. Right? It's much more prevalent among them. So they got to be more politically correct, quote unquote. We don't have to be politically correct. No, we don't have to be. But when you see a picture, I saw this and it just, like someone said, you got to go speak to Rav Sternbuch. He's got to say something. I guarantee he's going to say something. They have to wait. I got it today. Got the email today. Part of the sheet in Hebrew. Yeah, it's clear. I wonder if he put it in English. I don't know. See if a person put it in English. But it's crazy. When I saw that picture, I said, you got to be kidding. Was I shocked? No. Why wouldn't I be shocked? Because again, how can you be part of these people in the first place? You're going to say it'd be 10 times worse if they're not there. Okay, they have justification, some level of justification. But this is brown nosing. This is sucking up to somebody. How can you suck up to them? I don't care. They don't know any better. They have stats of Tino Shanishbas like they were captive as a baby. So what? It doesn't excuse this. Intermarriage doesn't excuse this. Right? So how can you look the other way and say, oh no, it's okay. You're just as valuable. It doesn't matter if you're not Jewish. We're going to accept you anyway. We'll call you to the Torah. We'll give you honor. How can you give them honors? How in the world can you give a non-Jew an honor in the synagogue? Doesn't mean they can't come to synagogue. How can you give them an honor? And even the one married to them, how could you call them up to the Torah? It's a contradiction. It's a total contradiction. Total contradiction. They can't make the blessing. It's a blessing in vain. So how do people get around it? People do what they want to do. Right? Make no mistake. You can be an Orthodox rabbi and be filthy to the core. You know, can even allow a missionary and a sex therapist come speak in your synagogue. Right? Person's on magazine covers, radio shows, has his own rabbinical court, head of a yeshiva. I wouldn't trust one word the person says. Not one. Not one. Tell me what time it was. I checked 5 times first. That's how bad it is. You know, doesn't make any sense. Except for the fact their brains are messed up. That's what it means. Yeah, let me see. Another question here. Someone says the book of Tehillim, it says power of unity is so great. United worships, when they're united, are not punished. Unity has power. So I have to see what verse you're referring to and where you're referring it from. You know, in the book of Psalms, unity is power. In general, I don't know why they wouldn't be punished in such a case, but in general, you know, if a person prays with 10 men, that's part of a congregation. Even if you're evil, let's say better, even if other people are evil in that congregation, your prayer can still be heard because you looked at it as a congregation. A congregation is power. That's why we say it's better to pray with a congregation rather than by yourself if you have an obligation to pray as a Jew. Right? It doesn't apply to women. We don't have to pray with 10 men. Is it better? Would be, but they don't have an obligation to. If they want to, they can. If they have time, whatever, you know. But, you know, a man much more powerful by a group, by 10 men. Because if a person prays on their own, if you're a guy, you pray on your own, what's the problem? God's going to scrutinize that prayer 10 times more. 10 times more than if you prayed with 10 men. Why? Because it's the power of the congregation. God's not going to scrutinize you as much because you're part of a group. If you're an individual, different issue. Totally different issue. 100%. So you got to pray with a lot more fervor. You know, if a person's under onus, okay, you're under onus. But a guy's got to be in synagogue 3 times a day. Your life revolves around that. So you got to make time. You got to figure out, okay, you know, if you work, you got to take time out and this and that. Sometimes you might have to pray on your own. You might not have a choice. You know, in the winter, sundown is early. So you might not get a chance to pray. You know, you might take a break and do it, whatever. Right? But you got an obligation. Man's got more of an obligation. There's no question. And if you pray by yourself, unless you're under total onus, that prayer is going to get scrutinized like no tomorrow. If you're sick, different issue. Totally different issue. Totally different issue. Right? But you got an obligation. Total obligation. How can we look the other way and say, well, I feel like it, I don't know, you got an obligation. People don't relate to prayer, true. Something that needs to be strengthened, true. 100% true. But you got an opportunity to speak in front of God, right in front of his face, quote unquote. You get an opportunity to draw close. You know, it's unfortunate what prayer looks like today. Some do it better, some worse. A lot of people have no connection. No connection. Something seriously has to be worked on. Right? That's not the topic. That's not the topic for now. So you have to show me that place and verse where it says that, and I'll take a look. But again, for Jews, unity has power. Has a lot of power. So I could say maybe non-Jews also. You know, if they're in a group, but if they're in a group, why shouldn't they get punished? Good question. Right? I don't know. I have to see in context. I have to see in context what it says. Yeah, someone points out, I was going to mention that about the Tower of Babel. Yeah, but they wanted to rebel against God. Right? True. They wanted to rebel. So by rebelling, God dispersed them. Right? God definitely did disperse them. Someone asks, Zvachim 116b, Megillah 13 brings both opinions. Gentile B'nai Noach can bring an altar and offer korbanos to Hashem, sacrifices. Yeah, sacrifices only free will offerings. They can also offer free will offerings in the temple. Right? Obviously not obligatory offerings. Right? I mean, we wouldn't hold that today. They don't have altars today. Right? Could a non-Jew bring a sacrifice? Why not? They want to bring a Thanksgiving sacrifice they can't bring? Why not? I don't see why not. I don't see why it would make any difference. Right? You're not doing anything against what the Torah says. A non-Jew wants to bring a sacrifice, Thanksgiving sacrifice. They got saved from I don't know, terrible disease, car accident, whatever. They want to bring a Thanksgiving offering. Why can't they bring it? They want to bring a free will offering. Why can't they bring it? Other offerings, maybe I understand. Maybe they don't apply to them. This, I don't see why it would be a problem. Someone asked Jeremiah chapter 35. Let's see. Let's see over here. Jeremiah 35. All right, what's the quote? 35, 18, and 19. In the Hebrew, yeah, now you have to translate in English. And what the blessing means to non-Jews today. All right, let's see, 35, 18, and 19. Let's see. If that's what you mean. Says verse 18. Yeah. 35, 18. Says the base Rechovim. Amr Yirmiyahu. Komar Hashem. Tavakos, okay, Yisrael, Yana Shir Shamatem, Amitvas, Yonadav, Avichem. Tishmur, let's go mitzvosai, Tasuko, Asher Tziva Esfu. So it says over here, in the house of Rechovim, right, of the Rechabites, says Jeremiah, so says God, Lord of hosts, God of Israel. And he says, because you have listened to the mitzvahs of your ancestor Yonadav, you guarded all his commandments, you did everything that God said. You did everything he commanded you. Sorry. You did everything he commanded you. All right, verse 39, Lachain, therefore, Komar Hashem Tzvakos, okay, Yisrael, Lo Yikaris Ishli, Yonadav ben Rechav Omer Lefnei Kol Hayom. I don't know if this is what you mean, but it says, therefore, thus says God, the host, God of Israel, you're not going to wipe out, you're not going to spiritually cut off. You're Nadav, the son of Rachav, who stands before you all these days. That's the translation. Now, that's the translation of that verse. So the question is, what's the command of blessing mean to non-Jews? Or who says it refers to non-Jews? First of all, who says it refers to non-Jews? All right, we're talking about Jews over here, first of all. Second of all, you listen to the command of your ancestors, you kept all his commandments. Right? So therefore, you're not going to be cut off. You did what you're supposed to do. Simple explanation. Simple explanation is that you did what you're supposed to do. You followed what your ancestors said. By doing so, you're going to stand before me all the days. You won't be cut off. Right? So the command over here, there's a command over here that they did the right thing. Right? If you listen to what God says, very good. Right? You do what he says, very good. If not, you're in trouble. Right? That's what it says over there. I don't know if that's the right quote. But the question's going to be, even if it was, even if it was, that can a family impose rules forever? No. The Torah imposes. Torah tells us what to do, what not to do. Gives us our obligation. So we have an obligation to do what God says. Across the board. Across the board. Right? So, and again, I think it's a misquote over here because it's not what you're telling me it says. I just read what it says. But can a family impose rules forever? Again, we don't have prophets today. There are no prophets today. So you have to listen to what the rabbis say. Right? So we go according to the males for the sake of what tribe we're in. Right? Females who's Jewish. Right? But family, a family over here. Rav says Rechabites were not Jews. Descendants of Yisrael. Okay. Right? So what? So that means that right, let's look before 1 second. Because it says over here that if you go against what God says, you're going to get punished. Verse 17. Oh, wait a minute, I might have read. Sorry. Wait a minute, 1 second. I think I read the wrong verse. My bad. 1 second. Yeah, I read the wrong part here. 1 second. And verse 18, it says, Lachain, Komar Hashem, okay, it's Vakos, Meva Yehudo, Ve'alko Yishvei Yerushalayim, Skol Ra, Asher Dibart Aleim, Yan Dibart Aleim, Vashem Ekro Aleim Lo Ya'anu. Right, oh, that's, no, I read the right thing. Never mind. So here it says, okay, you want to tell me they're not Jews? God says you kept the commandments, right? You kept whatever you had to keep, even if they're not Jews, let's say. Okay. So even if they're not Jews, they kept what they're supposed to keep. They're not going to wipe out. Right? That's simple explanation. Right? In other words, they kept what they're supposed to do. Right? So you're telling me the whole chat is about drinking wine. Okay, so what? Well, I still don't understand what the whole point is. Right? So we don't drink wine. You're right. Verse 8, verse 6. Right? You don't drink wine. You descend forever. You don't build a house. These other things. Right. So we did according to what our ancestors said. Okay. Then the Nebuchadnezzar came. Let's go to Jerusalem. And they settled there. And go say the men are okay, fine. So even if they're not Jewish, again, so yeah, they're not opposed to not to drink wine. So what? No, they didn't drink wine. Can they drink wine today? Not a problem. They want to drink wine, they can drink wine. They can't use it for idolatry, right? So what's the issue? Right? Well, what's the issue? Right. The question we wanted to say was, that doesn't apply today, because you're right. They didn't drink wine. Okay. Right. I think that's what. Yeah. So you're right. Non-Jews allowed to drink wine today? Doesn't apply. Doesn't apply. Right. It says that whatever they kept, they're not going to get punished by. They're not going to get They're not going to, be dispersed or any of these other things, right? So according to what Jeremiah says, so that's a positive thing, right? That's a positive thing, right? So therefore, but does that apply today? Can non-Jews drink wine? They can drink wine. They don't have to drink kosher wine. They can't use the wine for libations. But the question is, so non-Jews can impose prohibitions on their family. I don't know about that. What prohibitions are they allowed to put on their family? This is a specific case, right? Who says they're allowed to put prohibitions on their family in general? Right? Maybe he did. Who says it's for all generations? Who says it's for all generations? They can do that. We don't put prohibitions on our families. Whatever we're obligated to do, we have to teach them to go in the right way. So don't non-Jews have an obligation, to teach their children to go in the right path, to be Noahides? For sure. 100%. Right. Turner points out as well, you're right. Right. It's talking about, our lack of obedience. That's true. Right. But if you're going to, but the question stands. The fact that he imposed something, they listen to it, they get praised over here, right? They're not going to get spiritually cut off because they listen. Okay. That might be, a part of it. I don't want to say it's the whole point, right? But that's definitely, definitely a part of it. So my point is, even if that's true, even if that's 100% true, non-Jew has an obligation to teach their children to go in the right ways. That's their obligation. Non-Jews don't impose, they're not imposing other things on their own family. Nobody says that. There's one thing he did, okay? But that doesn't mean non-Jews across the board, Noahides can impose all kinds of prohibitions on the family. Who says? If you had prophecy, some prophet says they can do that, okay? But we can only, by Jews, it's all about what God says and what our obligation is. So non-Jews the same way. They have to educate their kids in that way. And if they can't, they have to find someone to teach them. Right? So that's not going to be for all future generations. They can just do what they want and impose whatever they want. For sure not. For sure not. He's not a prophet by any stretch. Right? He did something he got praised for, but again, in the bigger scheme of things, about what the Jewish people getting chastised for. The bigger picture is Jewish people, getting chastised for different things. So over here just mentions, okay, there's this thing, what happened? And because of what happened, he did this and they get praised. And they're not going to get wiped out, not going to get spiritually cut off. But what does that have to do with future generations? Shouldn't have anything to do. Okay, even if it says for all their future generations, they impose that. Very good. Who are descendants now? Let me ask the $1.5 million question. Who are their descendants now? Nobody knows. Sennacherib mixed up all the nations. We don't know who's who. We don't know who Amalek is. We don't know who anybody is. It's all mixed pot over here. It's all mixed pot. So that would end the story right there. Because we don't know who anybody is. We don't know who anybody is. Right? Yeah, so Noahides have to establish law courts. But that's an obligation of Noahide laws. It's not one of the Noahide laws. No one says it's one of the Noahide laws. You can't drink wine. And you have to listen to everything that, that happened in previous generations. Doesn't say that. Doesn't say that anyway. Doesn't matter, Rod. What's irrelevant? What's irrelevant over here? The fact the Arabs are Midianites. Do we know who the Arabs are today? They say they all came from Ishmael. Again, they're claiming that, but everyone got mixed up. If everyone got mixed up, how can they make such a claim? They make the claim, okay, what do they do with what do you call it, the Book of Judges? When it says Sennacherib took all these populations and mixed them all together. What do they do with that? So I'm sure they have an answer somewhere. Probably a bad one. Right? Doesn't matter. The fact that they all got mixed up, it doesn't apply. It's irrelevant. So you want to bring me a proof from what they're doing? What do I care what they do? Again, this has no relevance. There's no relevance. You're going to say, oh, they're doing it because of that. They can be doing it for 100 reasons. I don't know if they're doing it because of that. Just because it says in Jeremiah chapter 35, you tell me the Quran, they quote that, and that's what they do, maybe. I don't think that's why they do it. I'm pretty convinced that's not why they do it. Right? But in any case, we don't know who they are. So if we don't know who they are, how are they going to pass it down? They're going to claim we come from the line of Ishmael. Okay, so let them claim it. Let them claim it. Let them bring all their crazy proofs of why they think that's the case. Okay? They can bring whatever proof they want. Well, what does it matter? Right? The prophet says, it says in the book of Judges, Sennacherib mixed up all the population. He took the Egyptians and the Midianites and all these people and he put them all together and he mixed them all up. So what? No relevance. We don't know who they are. They were doing it before the Quran? I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know why I don't know why, but it doesn't apply. If you're talking about what Sennacherib did, that's well before this. It's well before this. Right? So even so, they're all mixed up, so we don't know who anybody is anyway. Again, don't get caught up in the fact what non-Jews do. We don't care what they do. What they do is irrelevant. You're going to say, but Jeremiah said for all generations. Not for all generations. It's definitely not for all generations. We see that. We don't know who they are. Could be, if you tell me who they are. Okay, there's one case. There's one case. The one case is the Bnei Keturah. Who are the Bnei Keturah? The sons that Avraham had from Keturah, who was known as Hagar. What's the only question by them? The only question is there bris milah? Do they have to do circumcision? So that is the whole question. That is the whole question. Whether they have an obligation or not. Some say yes, some say no, some say not the same obligation as a Jew. Whatever it is. Certainly not one of the Noahide laws. Right? So you'll say the Muslims also do it. Oh, very good. Where did they come from? Came from Abraham. So they took that on. But who says they have an obligation? Maybe they do. Maybe they do only because their father was Abraham. Right? Their forefather was Abraham. So maybe they do. But that's a different issue. That's the only case. You don't see it anywhere else. You don't see it anywhere else. The fact that, okay, we see it in this context. The context over here, if we're going to say we don't know who anybody is, even if you want to tell me, it's for all generations, we see a lot of things the Torah says for all generations we don't do. We can't do. Right? It should be for all generations, but it's not. Why? Temple got destroyed. Other thing. Nazirite vow is a different issue. Non-Jews don't take on Nazirite vow. Jews can't even take on Nazirite vow today. But certainly not non-Jews. Right? They can't take it. They can't. Listen, they could impose it upon themselves. By us doesn't mean anything. It's the same thing. If I would sprinkle a little bit of water, and say that's for baptism, you know what it means? You just got a little bit wet. Doesn't mean anything. Right? It has no meaning for us, so to speak. But even things that, let's make clear. Even things in the Torah itself, that it says for all generations, why don't we do it? You have the water that if a husband told his wife not to be alone with a certain person, and she has to drink these bitter waters. If she drinks it and she was guilty, right? Her stomach blows up. We don't do that today. You say maybe the waters were lost, this, that. But why don't we do it today? Because too many people commit adultery. The waters didn't have the same effect. What about the Ari Miklat? What about the cities of refuge? In the land of Israel, someone killed by accident. Too many people were killing. So that got nullified. There were things that got nullified. But it said, what about sacrifices? Same thing. Sacrifice should be forever. What happened? We don't have a temple today. So just because it says forever, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be forever. In this case, could be other things going to override it, right? That's what I would say. Yeah. Any other? Again, one important thing, as somewhere points out, is like we always say, you got to see things in context also, right? You got to see what it's talking about first, what the whole thing's about. So if there's a chastisement against the Jewish people, which is most of the book of Jeremiah, right? It's chastising the Jewish people, and then he mentions this one thing, you have to see it in context. You have to see the whole thing, you have to see the whole picture, right? Just because they did one thing and covenant, they didn't break this covenant or whatever, so they're not gonna get spiritually cut off and this and that, okay, but that's not really the main part, right? Not the main part. But you're right, if it says forever, I didn't see where it says forever, right? That it said it was actually forever. If that's the case, it's because something says forever doesn't necessarily mean it will be. And it could mean it's only in that context. It could mean something, other things could override it, could totally override it. And say, yeah, it should have been, but it didn't. It didn't happen that way. Let's say. Yeah, let me see. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. This is every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Going to do Tanakh talk, controversial issues. It's going to be 3 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Israel time. Saturday will be Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com, whichever good. Beginning of the day, middle of the day, and everyone, or almost end of the day, and everyone have a great rest of the week and a great Shabbat.